But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. Now it's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers to see what's making the news. And of course, we'll start with a Daily Trust newspaper. The major story on the front page reads, auto crashes claim 385 lives in 3 months. And Rider said, it says, Bauchi, Kebbi, Niger lead in casualty figures. 6,000 deaths recorded annually, and FRSC blames overspeeding, overloading others. Details of that story can be found on page 4. That is accompanied by the infographic that is there on the front page, showing the breakdown of these auto crashes. Easter clerics must stop desecrating pulpits with partisanship, hate speech. That is according to the Sultan, and details of that story can be found on page 5. Moving towards the bottom of the front page, encomiums as ex-World Court Judge Bola Ajibola is buried. And let's come together in unity, Can President tells citizens. Benue, gunmen killed 134 in 5 days, according to Autumn, and that story can be found on page 6. Moving towards the top of the front page, there the front page comment reads, we reject the $800 million World Bank loan for palliatives. And that should make interesting reading on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, and of course it continues on page 13. Now these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And now let's move to the Nation newspaper. The lead story here says, governors under pressure over security vote spending. There's a radio attached to this story. It says the third agency, NFIU, EFCC, seek movement of account to CBN for proper monitoring. That story started on the front page, but you continue from page 4 to get more details. And then let's take a look at the top here, where we have Osibajo, Obasanjo, others pay last respect at Ajibola's burial. Buhari Tinubu governors Ishola Mon ex-ICJ judge. It started on, okay, that story will be found on page 2 in the Nation's newspaper. Let's move to the next one at the top, which says APC ask a tribunal to dismiss APP, APM petitions. Okay, those are political parties there. Page 4 has the story. And then attacked Owo Catholic Church reopens months after. Page 3 has that story. Let's take a look at the bottom strip. Banks, oil firms, others flout stock exchange governance rules. Okay, a good look at it. The story started here on the front page, and then page 4 has more details of the story. And the last one we'll take this morning from the front page of the Nation newspaper says, election petitions, Kuka urges judiciary to do justice, and cleric ask incoming government to keep Nigerians alive. Okay, you can see a pictorial of Reverend Kuka there, and that there's a story starting there, but you continue reading on page 4. That's pretty much what we have in front of the Nation's newspaper this morning.
Next, we'll take a look at the Punch newspaper. The major story on the front page reads, fuel subsidy removal, marketers seek CBN loans for 30,000 gas stations. And it has riders here that says gas stations to cushion subsidy removal effect, as PMS may sell for 750 naira per litre. NATO wants end to subsidy, NLC to meet incoming government over removal date. And moving towards the bottom of the front page there, Bishop demands justice for 41 Owo attack victims as church reopens. Federal state lawmakers to get 49 billion naira. And bandits slash ransom for 85 Samfara abductees. Details of that story can be found on page 16. FG bars online banks from accessing customers' photos, contacts. You can find that on page 22. And moving towards the top of the front page, at the very top of the, above the mast head, asset declaration, defaulters may be removed from office. Find that story on page 8. Can governors, others preach love at Easter? And finally, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, Buhari Osibajo, MBA mourn ex-ICJ judge Ajibola. These are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's take it from here. The Guardian also has a pictorial of a late Ajibola. It says a jurist for ages that you can find on the bottom strip. But that story continued on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And then how Agbero multiple dues spike transportation costs by 25% in Lagos. Page 4 accommodates that story. Then still on at the bottom strip, Kuka task Nigerians next government on nation building. All right, page 6 has that story. And then APC may zone Senate presidency to Southeast. Page 5 accommodate that story. The lead story this morning in the Guardian newspaper says UK revises foreign health workers recruitment, returns Nigeria to red list countries. The writers attached to the story. One says outrage over bill mandating 5-year pre-licensing practice for Nigerian trained doctors. Another one says bill poly research reels out inaccurate figures. Federal government brain drain committee, the report not implemented, group inactive for months. The last rider from Dr. Tomori says if a bill becomes law, government officials should also stop medical tourism. That story is on page 3 this morning in the Guardian newspaper. That's pretty much what's in front of the Guardian newspaper for today.
Next, we'll take a look at this day newspaper. The major story is tributes pour in as Bola Ajibola is 89 is buried in Abeokuta. And we have riders here that says Buhari, Obasanjo, IBB, Tinubu, Osinbajo, Atiku, Lawan, Abiodun, Sanwo-Olu, others mourn, pay last respect. I appointed him AGF against position of people who described him as controversial as ex-military leader, and reveals the deceased didn't receive salary throughout his service to fatherland. Still talking about this day newspaper, World Bank advocates debt restructuring for poor countries. That is a story that you can find on page 12. Moving towards the top of the front page there. At Easter, Nigerian leaders advocate love among people. Osinbajo, CJN, Khan, Obaseki, others urge reciprocity in Christ-like values. Faleke on rotation of governorship, its turn of Kogi West for fairness, justice. You can find that story on page 41. At the very top of the front page there, autumn, we will not be provoked into taking up arms against anyone. And riders here to support that story. Atiku condemns Benue and for killings, urges FG to protect citizens. And police confirm escalation of banditry in Sokoto. Informants sabotaging our efforts, according to military officials. And with 89 expected assets, Nigeria to top Africa's upcoming oil gas projects by 2027. That story can be found on page 6. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of this day newspaper this morning.
Now, let's take a look at the major stories in front of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Just at the very top, we have avoid cheap talk, a fix Nigeria, Kuka tells Tinubu. Page 6 has the story. Then 15 killed. Bond beyond recognition in Enugu crash. That story is on page 21. And below that, we have Labour blames shoddy privatization for Abuja discos and orders a takeover. Started on the front page. Page 7 has more details. And just below that, we have Senate presidency. Akpabio may drop ambition for ministerial slots. Page 1 has the story. And then the lead story in the Leadership newspaper this morning says concerns over renewed terror attacks after 2023 polls. Riders attached to the story says security expert forwards president's marching orders to service chiefs without resort. And another one says they're already writing their handover notes. The last one says surviving IDP's desert camps in Benue. And that story is on page 4 in the Leadership newspaper. Just beside it, we have Osinbajo, governors can rejoice with Christians at Easter. Page 6 has the story. Then journalists, writers launch a book on Osinbajo on April 28. Page 6 also has that. And then PMB, IBB, Atiku, governors mourn ex-justice minister Bola Ajibola. Page 7 has the story. That's some of the major stories in front of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
And with that, we wrap up reading out the headlines from the front pages of the newspapers this morning. It's now time for us to take a deep dive and analyze some of these stories. And of course, right here in the studio, we have Mukhtar Suleiman, a public affairs analyst, to help us do that. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning.
Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Happy Easter, by the way.
Oh yeah. You know, people are so selfish these days. They use Ramadan as an excuse. They didn't give us rice.
Exactly.
I was wondering, like, Salah is coming.
Oh,
Just putting it out there. Salah is coming.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah, just putting it out there. I don't mean anything. I'm not threatening anybody, but Salah is coming.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, we hope to see that in good health. So let's take a look at the newspapers this morning. The major story on the front page of the Daily Trust talks about auto crashes, claiming to 385 lives in just 3 months. It's quite alarming when you look at it, and the FRSC is blaming overspeeding and overloading, amongst other things. But
is this just in Abuja or Nigeria in its entirety?
Nigeria in its entirety.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised it's this low.
Okay.
I don't mean 385 lives don't matter, but I came in from Bauchi over the weekend.
Okay.
I had to come in by road because my flight was cancelled. So when we're coming in to the express here, we saw a car just by this Mabushi Bridge, beside it rather, before it, just around that area. It was still on the road, but it was upside down.
Okay. And it was a lone vehicle?
It was just one vehicle.
Okay.
It was still on the road. It had already hit the curb already anyway, but it didn't fall off the road.
It just
flipped. But it was. I desperately want to know how that happened. You know, sometimes you're driving in Abuja and then you wonder how Abuja drivers drive. It's really, really funny. It's amazing how sometimes some of them drive as if they want to take off. Even a plane that wants to take off doesn't go at that speed. But it's really, really weird. How much of a hurry are you that you couldn't just do slow and steady to get to where you're going? So can we say
overspeeding is the main cause of these crashes?
One of it, overspeeding. One of it is overspeeding. Secondly, I could say poor maintenance of our roads.
Exactly.
But funny, ironically, because of how poor our roads are, we don't have as much accidents as countries in Europe or even in the United States.
As good as the roads are.
Because the road is so good, you have to run. Exactly. Ours is so bad, you have to slow down. So at some point,
are we saying it's a good thing now that the roads are so bad?
Well, pros and cons. It depends on how you look at it.
When we want to take advantage of some of the roads that are smooth, we go overboard and then we have lots of numbers. I'm surprised that we're having these low numbers, according to statistics from the FRSC. But now, taking a look at this holistically now, what do you think is responsible for this? Is it that the FRC is not doing enough? Because I know they don't work at night and most of these accidents happen at night. What do you think is the problem?
I think it's individual responsibility at the end of the day. Everybody has to know that they have families to get back home to, people who depend on them, people who love them, people who want to see them again. So you have to drive it hard carefully when you're moving. So it's a personal responsibility at the end of the day. And I think also that it has something to do also with how we issue out license in this country. Most people don't even go to the driving school. I'll give you an example. When I went to get my license recently, and because I don't drive usually until this year, started driving again properly this year, so it's been years. So when I went to get the license, I'd already done driving school, which was mandatory, got the certificate. What's his name? The person who was supposed to do the driving school test for me. You know, apparently there's a way you beat the system, and then the person takes it for you. And I wasn't comfortable with that. The person said I should give him a certain amount of money. I told him I'm not doing that. I'm sorry, I've already paid for license, and giving you money is not something I'm going to do. So he said, in that case, you do the test by yourself. I said, no problem, bring up the test. I did the test. I got 87% the first time. Now, if you get below 60, you fail. So he was shocked. I saw him disable the network. I saw him do it because he didn't want that. I think he thought that was a fluke. So he didn't want that to submit. So he said, there's no network. The network is slowing down. I have to do it again. And when you do it again, the questions change. So I went ahead and I did it again, and I got 83%. he was shocked. So he called the guy, person who sent me to him, and like, guy, that person really. So it's to show you that the kind of people that he has interacted with don't even know. And these questions are very basic. Basic questions like, if you're in a roundabout, who has the right of way? If you see the braking lines what does the braking line on the road, or the straight line, what does it mean? And these are basic knowledge that you should have if you go to a proper driving school. So I think Nigeria needs to do more in terms of policing that system, just to ensure that more people get to understand road traffic laws more before they begin to actually motor the roads.
All right, well, we hope that those things are actually looked into. Now, let's take a look at something else. I mean, last week we got the news that the federal government has put a lot of emphasis on fuel subsidy removal, and they also went ahead to get a facility from the World Bank of quite a sizable amount of money. The front page comment on the front page of Daily Trust says we reject that that amount of money as palliatives for Nigerian citizens, which we are meant to believe is going to be doled out. So do we have any choice in the matter?
First,
we reject it or not?
Well, I think we do, because we are the people who are supposed to
but we weren't
benefit
consulted.
from this.
We were not consulted.
Well, the problem now is, I think the Nigerian government needs to learn that you cannot run the country like an NGO. You're not a humanitarian aid foundation. I think that's what the country needs to understand. My position on fuel subsidy has always been clear. I've always been for removing the fuel subsidy. But before I go into what my position is again, $800 million US. And I think the cable did a breakdown of what that would look like for 50 million Nigerians, they say. And that's about $16 per person.
Basic calculations there.
Basic calculation. And that's about 11,000 naira at black market rates and 7,000 naira at CBN rates.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense. Absolutely no sense. So my question to Nigerian government would be, in a country of over 200 million people, where over 60% of your population is living in multidimensional poverty, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics last year, how then did you decide that only 50 million people need palliatives? How did you come to that conclusion? When you did come to that conclusion, who are the 50 million Nigerians that you want to give? Because beyond the people who are living in multidimensional poverty, the other people that are not even in the multidimensional poverty index are underemployed. A large percentage of them are underemployed. So how do you decide who gets this palliative that you actually want to dole out?
And of course,
it doesn't make sense.
The amount itself. I mean, like you talked about, if it's the official rate is like $7 grand. Yeah, so we're looking at it on the front page of the Punch now. We're saying that fuel may sell for as high as 750 naira per
I don't
liter,
even have a problem with that.
which is like when you talk about that the pallet, exactly, that's just like 10 liters.
So it doesn't make sense. So I don't even have a problem with if fuel goes as high as 1,000 naira. But my argument for it is, if you really, really want to do right by Nigerians, $800 million US is enough to fix some of the issues in the power sector. Ensure that there is stable power in at least 98% of the country. Ensure that there is effective and efficient inter and intra-city transport networks. This would help to curb the inflation that this fuel removal will otherwise create. Because if there's stable power, production will go up. If production goes up and we're not having to spend money on fuel to power generators, then inflation, price of goods will come down. More so, people should not have to pay premium price for PMS to generate primary source of power. I shouldn't have to buy 700 naira per liter just to get light in my house, to charge my phone. It doesn't make sense. It's unfair. So I think that's something that the Nigerian government needs to look into, as opposed to doling out money, because doling out money doesn't really help anybody at the end of the day. But then, even after, what's even the certainty that all 50 million is going to get on their money, because we know that the government has never lived up to its words.
And what criteria are we going to use?
Okay, so
how do you ascertain
going to be a raffle draw?
No, talking about
simple random
now,
system.
The federal government, in their defense, are saying that they have a social register where these vulnerable people have been registered. And some pundits have said that, okay, a lot of people have said, let's invest this into capital projects where ordinary Nigerians, all Nigerians can enjoy at the end of the day. What happens if this money is being given to these people to execute this project, and then it ends up in some people's pockets?
What happens if it still ends up in some people's pockets? Either ways. Who is to say that it's going to actually get to the social register that you're actually mentioning? Who are the names on the social register? Can we see them? Can it be published? For in the NGO space, in the development space, if we do a project or a program, and then we give out maybe stipends, each person who collects a stipend signs their name. At the end of the day, they drop their phone number, their email, and then signs their name. That way, the auditor can call anybody at random, just to be sure that are they going to do that? Are they going to get 50 million people to sign their name on a sheet of paper, just to be sure that they actually give it out to 50 million? Accountability is a very key thing, and the Nigerian government have shown that it's lacking in that, in terms of integrity and accountability over the years. They've never really lived up to most of the things that they promise, the way they promise it. So I think this is something that really needs to be reviewed. It doesn't make sense. I spent a short time in the power sector, not very long, but I think $800 million will go a long way in settling at least 4 or 5 states to ensure stable power in those states. And that's the start of ensuring, of fixing what the problems are in the power sector. One of the major issues with the power sector is not even the availability of resource. It is the kickback funding that comes back. If we can eliminate kickback, or at least reduce it, let's be realistic, it's going to make there's going to be larger impact in the power sector. That's why I'm so happy with the new EPSRA, that's the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act that the President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law some weeks back. It's very good because then it decentralizes power regulation from NEC and gives it back to the states. So it makes it a bit easier. So that way, if Delta State begins to have stable power and Edo is not, Delta State will say, Mr. Oga, look at our neighbor. What are you doing? So it makes more sense. We'll see those people that actually want to work and those that actually political competition will become a proper thing in terms of governance, because the PDP states want to outdo the APC states so that maybe they will win next elections. So that way, we will know that competition will lead to the benefits of Nigerians as opposed to just the benefits of politicians.
But you agree with people who would argue that implementation of bills or assented bills never really work in Nigeria?
This is different because this has to do with, how do I put this? Each state becomes responsible, yeah? And each state has different parties that are leading. With states like Abia, where Labour Party is currently, and Labour Party is looking to break into the political market properly, you can tell that that person will do everything possible to leverage on what the policy says to ensure that there is stable power in their state. If there is stable power in Abia and there is none in Imo people will ask their government question. That's why I said it will lead to political competition that will lead to the benefit that will benefit Nigerians, as opposed to the political competition that only benefits politicians. So which is something that I think is actually good for our polity, and governance will be improved. Well, I hope so anyway, because if there's one place you always see politicians unite is in selfish interest.
Well, talking about the power sector, and of course the things that are going wrong or going right is the power sector. A story here on the front page of the leadership says Labour blames shoddy privatization for Abuja discourse and of course others in the entire takeover of the electricity distribution sector. Are you one of those who actually believes that the whole process was bungled, so to speak?
I think so. I think so, but I don't appropriate as much blame to the discourse as much as I would to the Nigerian government itself, because production is still done by the government. The discourse distributes. These guys are trying to maximize profit as much as possible. So of course they're going to prioritize areas where they get more money from, and then because if there's not enough power to go around, then they will have to prioritize areas they get more money from and then share some of the power among the other areas. So you see areas like Wuse to get a lot of power because why? There is increased market activities in those places. And because of increased market activities, prepaid meters means that they're going to buy more units. So these guys are profit making. So if the production can go up, because you cannot waste power. If there's power unused, it is a big problem. So if production can go up from the producing side can be better, the distribution side can then be improved a little. At least the distributors still have some excuse as to, there is not enough production. But when there's enough production to ensure that distribution is evenly evilly goes round, then you have no excuse. Then people can actually come for your head properly.
Yeah, but at one point, the transmission was actually way up there. I mean, like it was up to 4, 5, even 7,000 megawatts.
We've never had a stable, say, 5,000 megawatts in years. So again, it's still prioritizing the areas where you know that you're going to get more money from, or the areas where you think there are more people who are influential and could affect your business. Because again, like I said, these guys are profit-making driven. So this is where government regulation and government input becomes very pertinent to private sector businesses. So if government is not doing its own part, what moral high ground does it have to then hold private sector responsible?
It's really heartbreaking when you hear some of these government officials talk about it. Not forgetting the scorecard that just happened from the Ministry of Power. And when you listen to the minister talk, you think that these things are going to be implemented, and then we feel the impact as soon as possible. But we keep waiting years and years and years. It doesn't even happen.
Nigeria is not short of competence. Nigeria is just nonchalant. I've said this like 1 million times.
But we have the manpower to make things happen.
We don't just have the manpower, we have the resource, enabling resource and everything to make anything happen. But we're just nonchalant. And we have been so bedridden by corruption, senseless corruption like I like to call it, that we no longer see things from national interest lens anymore. So that's something that needs to come back. There's corruption everywhere, but it should be sensible corruption. Something that actually leads to some level of improvement in standard of living, either for your people or for yourself at least, but within the confines of where you're supposed to influence some level of socio-economic activities. And that's something that Nigeria doesn't have. And I'm hoping that eventually, maybe the new set of politicians that are coming in can set a chain reaction that can actually improve the system even far much more better than what we have.
Speaking about chain reactions now, something worthy of talking or discussing this morning is the concerns of a renewed terror attack after the 2023 elections. Some people have attributed it or coined it as a resurgence of insecurity in Nigeria. And security experts, different views, opinions about all of this. What do you think is the cause of this resurgence of insecurity in Nigeria?
We've always known that political actors have deep-rooted hands in what is happening in terms of the insecurity in the country. It's an open secret. Well, who are the politicians? We don't know yet. It's sad and sickening because during the elections, we saw these guys took a break. Whether they went to vote as well, we don't know. But it took a break and it was reduced. But now they're coming back all over again. And it is really, really, again, it is sickening to say the least about what is really happening in this, in terms of insecurity in the country. And I've always said that if I could advise the president-elect, I'll tell him to do 2 things in his first tenure, even if he doesn't do anything else. If he can focus on 2 things, insecurity and stable power. You should forget about anything else for now, don't get distracted. Every other thing can be secondary, but if you can focus on these 2 things, because they have chain reactions to every other thing. So if you do infrastructure development and I don't feel very safe to go access it, it's going to be there and it's going to rot away. So, but if there's stable power in the country, socioeconomic activities will actually increase. Production will go up, inflation will come down, demand and supply, just basic economics would take effect for the benefit of the country. So I think if he doesn't do anything, if he can do these 2 things, I think he has done right by Nigeria for the first tenure, and then he can move on to other things for the second tenure.
Okay.
All right, now let's take a look at things coming out from the health sector now. A lot of, for recent times, we've been talking about this brain drain, lots of doctors leaving the country, healthcare workers, nurses, and the rest of it. And now on the front page of The Guardian is a story that says the UK revises foreign health workers recruitment, returns Nigeria to red list countries. And of course, recently we've heard there's a bill mandating a 5-year pre-licensing practice for Nigerian-trained doctors. How do you see this be playing out?
I have a cousin who's a neurosurgeon who recently relocated. And if you ask him properly, when we had a conversation before he left, he doesn't really want to leave.
Okay.
He never really wanted to leave. But he had to leave because there's a deplorable working state of doctors in the country. They are old for a month. I met a doctor because some weeks ago, I went to write IELTS, and he was also writing. Then we got talking, and he told me that he's working for a national hospital for 6 months. He has never been paid for the past 6 months. So it is really, really appalling what's happening in that sector. It is annoying that the senators are not trying to address the issues. They're just trying to choke the doctors instead. The problem is not that they really don't want to leave. Being a doctor in Nigeria is such a thing of a pride. But that pride has actually gone down the hill for the past how many years now. And it is not the issue. You cannot deal with an effect without handling the cause. So why are they leaving? They're leaving because hospitals they don't have enough equipment to work. Hospitals are not in good shape. They're not being paid well enough to actually level up to actually compete effectively in the current market. That needs to change. You can't force them to stay. You're not fixing the issue. It's unfortunate that the UK has actually, well, Nigeria has always been on the UK red list anyway. It's not like it's a new thing. So let's not let them not act like it's something that happened yesterday. It happened a long time ago. But I'm really hoping that this can be reviewed, revised, and they can think clearly about what they're doing. I saw a tweet from the senator, the chairman of the health, I've forgotten his name, yesterday, a long tweet he made where he was actually saying that we want Nigerian doctors to stay, then we have to do well enough for them to stay. So we cannot say that we want to force them by bill or a policy for them to remain in the country. And I like something that says in the news report that says, if you make this a law, that Nigerian students doctors must spend at least 5 years after education, then people should not go for medical tourism anymore.
Exactly.
Stay back in the country and receive your treatment here.
Exactly.
So could that be like the African country recently? I think it was Zimbabwe who made it prohibited that no doctor should leave the country because they have less than 35,000 doctors to about 50 million people in the country. It's really unfortunate because the problem is not, we have to deal with the cause and not focus on the effect. Yeah, we understand that Nigeria actually trained them, and honestly, yes, I've always said this before, for the quality of education we receive, what we are paying is very cheap, extremely cheap, because we pay, the highest you pay to go to a school in Nigeria is about $200 in a year. In a public university, of course, it's about $200 in a year. And you compete with doctors at international level who pay $20,000 to actually go to school per semester. So, but then again, are you making the workforce conducive for that?
Exactly.
Well, I need to correct something. It's 3,500, not 35,000, to about 50 million people.
All right. Well, that is quite appalling, and we hope we don't get to that state right in Nigeria. Once again, Mukhtar Suleiman, thank you very much for coming on the show, and of course, we appreciate those insightful analysis coming from you. And of course, you said there's this thing, the corruption that you said. There's something you said about corruption.
Senseless corruption.
Senseless corruption.
And sensible corruption. Exactly. I think I'll borrow that. So thank you very much for coming on the show. All right. So this is where we draw the curtains on the newspaper review right here on Daybreak. Stay with us when we return at the top of the hour. The show continues. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that